Welcome back to The Explainer. Now, if you grew up with siblings, you probably know a thing or two about rivalry. The bickering, the fighting over the remote. But while human parents are usually stepping in to break up those fights and keep the peace, in the animal kingdom, well, sibling rivalry is a completely different ballgame. It's a brutal, high-stakes game of genetic mathematics. Today, we're unpacking some fascinating research that totally flips our understanding of parental mediation on its head, because in the wild, parents don't always want you to get along. In fact, sometimes they literally want to fight to the death. Okay, let's dive into this with a question that honestly sounds absolutely wild. When exactly does it make sense to kill your sibling, right? It sounds like the plot of a horror movie. But as you'll see, for certain species, it's actually a perfectly legitimate and incredibly successful evolutionary strategy. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to travel deep beneath the ocean's surface to witness one of the most intense beginnings to life on planet Earth. Enter the sand tiger shark dilemma. Eat or be eaten before you're even born. Here's how it works. When a baby sand tiger shark hatches from its egg, it doesn't just happily swim out into the open ocean. No, it finds itself completely trapped inside its mother's uterus. And, crucially, it's not alone in there. It's sharing that really tight, pitch-black space with its siblings. The situation almost instantly turns into a grim reality of eat or be eaten. They are forced to consume their own brothers and sisters just to survive, before they are even born. It's super weird, it's undeniably brutal, but this whole bizarre scenario actually reveals a hidden logic in nature. Pitting your kids against each other? It turns out that can be an absolute winning strategy for passing on the strongest possible genes. Section 1. Nature's insurance policy. To grasp the biological math behind this kind of backup plan, we need to step back from cannibalistic baby sharks for a minute and look at a slightly less gory example from the skies. Let's look at the black eagle strategy. What's absolutely fascinating here is the deliberate calculation these birds are making. You see, a black eagle pair will first build and defend a nest, then lay exactly 2 eggs as an insurance policy, and finally let the strongest chick survive. But here's the catch. There's practically never enough food in their environment to actually feed and raise 2 hungry eagle chicks, and the parents know this. Yet they go through all the trouble of laying 2 eggs anyway. So when both eggs hatch, the tiny chicks are forced to fight each other for survival, while the parents literally just sit back and watch. I know, it sounds completely brutal, but let's think about this logically for a second. Why go through the immense effort of laying 2 eggs if you know for a fact that only one can survive? Well, consider the absolute mountain of time and energy these eagle parents spend before those eggs even arrive. Think about it. They have to build a massive nest, they have to constantly defend it from intruders and predators, and they have to spend weeks carefully incubating. If they only laid one single egg, and for whatever reason that egg didn't hatch, or maybe the single chick hatches but gets sick and dies, well, all of that massive parental effort, all that energy, would be completely wasted for the entire breeding season. So that second egg acts as the ultimate biological backup plan. Since the parents already have to go to all that trouble to build and protect a nest, it makes perfect mathematical sense to lay 2 eggs. It completely prevents a total loss of parental effort. If the first one fails, the second one is right there as a healthy backup chick. But what if both hatch and are totally healthy? Well, that's when the nest turns into a literal thunderdome. The stronger one always emerges victorious, and the parents only have to feed and care for the winner. It guarantees that the absolute best, most resilient genes are the ones getting passed on. And it's not just black eagles doing this, by the way. Various other birds and even some insect species use this exact same strategy, bearing extra offspring just to use as insurance, only to pit the survivors against each other in the end. And this brilliantly illustrates how calculated nature can be. Which brings us to Section 2, the womb thunderdome. Let's head back into the water and revisit our sand tiger shark. Because while birds use this as a backup plan, the shark takes this extreme sibling rivalry to an entirely different, incredibly intense level. 20. A mama sand tiger shark can actually incubate up to 20 eggs at a single time inside her uterus. That means, theoretically, she possesses the biological hardware to birth 20 babies all at once, straight into the ocean. But we run into the 20 baby problem. If she were to actually give birth to 20 sharks at once, every single one of those babies would be tiny. I mean, way too small to thrive in the harsh reality of the ocean. At that size, they're completely unable to hunt for their own food effectively, and worse, they're highly vulnerable to larger predators. They would basically just be releasing 20 bite-sized snacks into the food chain. And from an evolutionary standpoint, That is a terrible return on investment for the mother. So what's the evolutionary solution here? Well, it's an intrauterine buffet. Female sand tiger sharks have evolved reproductive systems that specifically trap their babies inside after they hatch from their internal eggs. For several long months, these unborn sharks are locked in this dark arena with absolutely nothing else to sustain them, so they are forced to snack on their own siblings. The mother is essentially using her own offspring to feed her strongest offspring. And the result of this terrifying process is absolutely astonishing. 1 meter. That is roughly 3 feet long, which for a newborn anything is just massive. By the time this whole intrauterine battle royale is over, only one ultimate survivor is actually born. But this soul shark doesn't enter the world as some helpless little baby. No way. It emerges measuring a full meter long, fully equipped with a mouth packed tight with razor-sharp teeth. Because it spent all those months feeding on its siblings, it's born massive, powerful, and entirely ready to take on the open ocean. It essentially skips that vulnerable infant stage altogether and enters the world straight up as an apex predator. So, the crucial point is that survival sometimes demands unimaginable ruthlessness. Which brings us to Section 3, Human Evolution and Buttloads. Let's take a deep breath, leave the womb Thunderdome behind for a second, and look at how all this compares to our own lives. The contrast in survival strategies between us and them is pretty stark. Human parents generally step in so kids get along and all survive, making sure that rivalry doesn't go too far. We want our kids to get along out of love, sure, but also because for humans, communal cooperation has always been our winning survival strategy. The more we cooperate, the stronger we are. But for these animal parents, the math is entirely different. They actively promote a fight to the death to pass on the best genes. They are optimizing for quality over quantity, aiming for only the absolute toughest, most battle-tested genes. Honestly, looking at those brutal beginnings in the wild, isn't it kind of nice that human parents mostly just wanted us to share our toys? Now, as we start to wrap up this explainer, I want to pivot seamlessly into a really fun, surprising little piece of trivia that popped up in the source material we were reviewing today. The researchers discussing all this animal taxonomy casually mentioned that people have been consuming this kind of scientific information by the buttload, which, of course, acts as a fun pressure release valve for this heavy topic and raises a very important, highly scientific question. So what exactly is a buttload? Believe it or not, it's an actual technical term. The word buttload derives from Old English. Back in the day, large wooden beer casks were literally called butts. So a single buttload represents the volume of one of those massive casks, which equals roughly 500 liters of liquid. To put that into perspective for you, the creators of our source material calculated that 500 liters is equal to the volume of about 1,000 of those cardboard tubes you'd use for animal taxonomy posters. So the next time you use that phrase to describe having a lot of something, you can feel 100% confident knowing you're using historically accurate medieval brewing terminology. Which brings us to our final thought. Next time you argue with your sibling, will you appreciate that you aren't a sand tiger shark? Nature is endlessly fascinating, brutally efficient, and it operates on a mathematical logic that often completely defies our human sensibilities. Whether it's eagles laying backup eggs or sharks hosting intrauterine buffets, the drive to pass on the absolute best genes shapes the animal kingdom in mind-blowing ways. I really hope this explainer gave you a new appreciation for the wild world out there, and maybe, just maybe, a little extra gratitude for your own siblings. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the incredible mechanics of the world around us.